Hola, I am Joe Pardavila, and you are listening to the Forbes Books Podcast. And with the pandemic lockdowns way back in our rearview mirror, people are traveling like never before. One study said that the adventure tourism market size will be worth $1 trillion by 2030. But we all know traveling the world isn't the easiest thing to do in the world. So my guests this week have created a new market, social travel technology, that lives in the intersection of global travel, travel tech, and influencer marketing. Devon Keakulina DeAngelo and Nacera Belal are the founders of Landng, and they're on a mission to make the experience of travel planning frictionless, inclusive, and creative. Nacera, welcome to the podcast.
Hi there. Thank you for having us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. And Devon, thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you for having us. Happy to be here.
So, Devon, I want to start with you because this is an interesting concept that you two have put together, because when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, okay, so this is like a travel Etsy that's sort of B2C, but it's really more a B2B concept. So can you take us back to the beginning and how this all came together and walk us through the B2B model?
I love that you are starting with the sort of B2C and the B2B aspect, because that's definitely, we're solving a pretty complex problem, right? And the sort of genesis, I would say, of Landng came from, Nacera and I living abroad. We did our master's degrees in Paris, back in 2015. And, as a student, you're wanting to travel around, and we were faced with that problem of just complete overwhelm when it comes to trip planning. And, if you're saving, at the time you couldn't even save on Instagram. You'd have to screenshot photos, looking at blogs, publishers, and everything to try and figure out, besides the accommodation and your flight, what are you going to do in terms of experience when you're traveling somewhere new? And so, that sort of started how Nacera and I were faced with this problem, and then started to think together about what that solution could look like. And so, in terms of the B2C aspect, we're needing to build a tool to, sort of streamline that process from discovery into an actionable itinerary. And so we can get into that a bit later in terms of how exactly it works. But so that's more of the B2C aspect of the platform, is solving the problem of travel content overwhelm when creating a trip plan.
Okay.
And when it comes to the B2B aspect of things, we were having to think, how are we going to generate that database of customizable itineraries? And really, when we're thinking about it, you're not just asking for recommendations when it comes, if it's your friends or people you're looking at what creators are doing. You're looking at what publishers, for thinking about, even Condé Nast, for example, or Forbes travel guide, for example. We're looking at sort of inspiration from all different types of sources. And so bringing, creators and what we call B2B customers, but that can be travel and lifestyle brands, tourism authorities, agencies, publishers, anyone that's, playing a role in the travel content ecosystem, bringing them together in our creator marketplace. And that's a model that has, existed since the sort of rise of, what an influencer is, and, brands wanting to work with them as a sort of channel on their own. And so what we're doing is just bringing all of that together, free for users from the B2C side, but generating revenue on the creator marketplace aspect of things. And our sort of model in that sense is going to be SaaS and transaction.
Interesting, because it's you guys. I mean, I hate to say, you guys are biting a big. You're biting a lot into what you're trying to do here. Because some companies will be like, "Hey, we're going to start B2B, then B2C, or vice versa." So, Nacera,
Nope.
what was the inspiration to just tackle all this at once?
I think, and you're right, it's a big bite that we're taking out, but I think it just makes so much sense, and we can't solve one problem without the other. And so by really looking at the problem in reality, that it's twofold, right? We have the supply and then we have the demand. So how do we solve that for everyone? And we've developed a platform that can do just that, right? So we like to kind of think of ourselves as like the Pinterest for travel planning, right? So the user experience from a consumer aspect is going to be really similar to all of the platforms that exist out there, right? We're not reinventing anything in terms of that. It's going to be, search, being able to save posts, being able to create like specific boards or lists, and then sharing those out. So the core capabilities are pretty native, right, to most users these days. And then on the business end, the B2B side, we're also not reinventing anything. We're taking that existing model of influencer and creator marketplaces and just plugging it into the platform so that everyone has a one-stop shop. Whether you're a business, a publisher, a creator, whomever, you're either going to log on the platform and be able to access the information and the tools that you need right away and kind of make the experience complete.
Interesting. Okay. And Devon, I always like to joke that there's no such thing as an original idea. So is there something like Landng that already exists, or is this a brand new species of internet company?
If we're looking at the spaces that we're sort of sitting in, on one side, there's, a travel planning tool. There are a zillion of those that exist. And on the other side of that, it's creator marketplaces, which also, there's at least, there's 100 that we've identified, but those are popping up more and more as that, the sort of creator economy and that industry grows. However, the problem has yet to be solved, right? There's still the problem of being completely overwhelmed by content when trip planning. And so people, businesses have definitely tried to solve a portion of the problem. If we're looking at, we're really inspired by Pinterest's sort of promise to their users, for example, where, it's not just inspiration, but take action and go do those things that you're inspired by. But the sort of missing component when it comes to travel content that we've identified is that there's a sort of miss between travel content discovery to taking action versus other content types, that are, if we're taking food or fitness, pretty much any other one, that sort of way that you can take action is to go and purchase the products that you need. So driving to purchase in order to go and do that thing that inspires you. But if you're watching a reel of someone's trip to Bali, you can't just click, oh, I want to do that experience, right? It's so much more complex than that. And so no platform to date has solved the problem in its sort of entirety. And so that's really what we're looking to do in the simplest, clearest way. And when, coming back to our mission, our mission is really to make the experience of travel planning frictionless, inclusive, and creative. And really, frictionless meaning the sort of touching on each of the pain points of that process. Inclusive also being, amplifying voices that, if it's cultural voices, people, creators that are really knowledgeable about their certain niche, if it's female solo travel, if it's LGBTQ travel, amplifying those different types of voices. And then, creative, it can be such a creative, amazing process to plan a trip. And so really just trying to streamline all of that and removing the pain points of it so you can just enjoy the process and, be inspired by your trips.
And Nacera, you've worked for a bunch of startups along the way. What prepared you in those stops that gave you the knowledge to, it's like one thing I always learned was like, I try to see what the best do and then either mimic what they do or don't do what they do because you don't like the way they do it. So was there something you learned along the way where you're like, when you decided to found a company, like, I want to do this, but I don't want to do that?
Yes, absolutely. I think every experience I had, and my most recent gig was actually at a Fortune 500 company. So while it was a very large organization, our group kind of operated as a startup within that. So I think that obviously lended a lot in terms of the transition into kind of building out Landng. But I would say every experience that Devon and I have had, we try to apply it in some way, whether, as you said, like it's, okay, we're definitely not going to operate like this, or we're definitely going to do this differently. I think one of the biggest things, and this has come out for a lot of people the last few years, is being able to work remotely and hybrid kind of aspect. So a lot of the startups that I was working at for 4 years ago, we were already doing that, right? It wasn't out of need due to COVID. It was just how our business worked best. We had distributed teams, so being able to be flexible and work with people all over the world, things like that. So I think those kind of key aspects and key experiences have lent a hand to Devon and I in terms of getting everything set up. Particularly because right now she and I are on the other side of the world, right? Like she's operating out of European time. I'm over here on the East Coast. We're both traveling. So I think that's really that agility and being able to jump in at any time is key skill that we both share.
And Nacera, you mentioned the team. Talk to me about the team. Who's involved? Is this a 2-woman, monster, or how many hands are on deck here?
Yes. So at the moment, it is the two of us primarily. We've worked with a few consultants and freelancers throughout the last year. We are going to be hiring our kind of technical consultant that will work alongside us. And then we're also engaging a development and design agency to build out our MVP. And then later in the year, as like we're fundraising and all that, we have a few kind of key hires that we're targeting. So we're looking for a CTO, so putting that out into the universe. Anyone who's listening, if you have someone who loves travel, is looking to do something fun, exciting, and new, and really innovate the space, we'd love to hear from you. We're also going to be hiring some marketing folks and sales folks as well.
Awesome. And Devon, so let's go back to the genesis of the company, because as I mentioned, you two are co-founders. You're CEO, Nacera's COO, which is always, for most CEOs and founders, it's always finding that other half, the other side of the coin. So why did you know that Nacera was the other side of the coin?
Oh, I love this question. So, it's really funny just the way that we met. We actually met on our first day of grad school at grad school orientation. It was an instant connection between the both of us. And as we sort of grew in our friendship, we both come from, multicultural families. I'm from Hawaii originally, so Hapa, Hawaiian, Korean, and a bunch of other things. Nacera is Algerian American. And so we just sort of bonded on that sort of, having similar views, sometimes completely different, but like our sort of relationship, we know how to listen deeply to each other. We're in sync. And, when we sort of identified this problem together and started creatively thinking about what the solution could look like, it was a really inspiring time to be in. And we actually joined an incubator last year called LaunchPeer as part of the GAN network. And so being able to sort of make sort of solid or solidify this idea in a more structured space, to the point of us being able to leave our jobs, create our Delaware C Corp and all of that together. It's been a really, really fun ride so far, and I wouldn't want to be founding a company with anyone else.
And Nacera, it sounds like you two were founders before you had an idea. Is that correct? Give me the chronological order of like what your joint partnership came and then the idea came, or did the idea come along those early days of your partnership?
Yeah, and actually, I would love to just add on to that previous question, because I just had a funny memory, and I don't know if Devon, you'll remember this, but one of our first, a few weeks after we met, we planned a girls' trip with a group of girls to go down to Vichy, which is a town in France, south of Paris. And so, we had a car that we rented and we drove down there, and Devon actually drove and I was the co-pilot. And so and then we had a, back seat full of other people. So our friendship and kind of dynamic has been pretty consistent, right? Like I think our roles are really well suited to not only our professional backgrounds, but just how we operate personally. So just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, in terms of the idea, so Devon came to me with, in typical Devon nature, PowerPoint and some slides, and kind of pitched a version of what we're now working on, and was like, would you be interested in building this with me? And I was like, yes. And so we did what a lot of founders do. Like, we immediately hired a designer to create a prototype, and just we're building out feature sets, and just got really nitty gritty, and used that to kind of start some of the discussions. And then, life happened, moves, all these different things, job changes. And so it kind of got put in the back burner. And then I would say around the beginning of COVID, we were like, all right, the world is changing. Our lives are changing. The dynamic in the world is changing. Like, how do we feel about really taking this seriously? And so we applied to that incubator, got in, and since then it was just kind of no looking back. Like, definitely full throttle, and trying not to have fear, although that's always a part of the process.
Got it. And Devon, it almost seems like that was a metaphorical trip, the road trip, that you were the driver and Nacera was your co-pilot. What do you remember about that trip as to the early beginnings of your relationship?
That was a really, really special trip. I don't know if you know anything about Vichy, but they have like mineral hot springs. And that's definitely something that we enjoy doing together, is, relaxing, going to spas, but just finding time to decompress, right? And I think that's been a real focus for us also on a personal level, but that applies to our business. In terms of even when it comes to the chronological timeline, yes, we've had this idea, we've been sitting on it, but who we are right now is much more suitable to bring this business, to the world. And so I don't, it's a little woo-woo, but everything happens when it's supposed to. This is a prime example of that. I'm very happy with, the growth that, we both have, we, in our previous, corporate worlds, really easy to burn out, to not have your priorities straight. And so being able to have this space to do that sort of self-reflection, become work on becoming our best selves while growing this business, it's sort of a synergy in terms of personal and professional, for sure.
And Nacera, I know a lot of your career you focused on sustainability and social impact. How does that fit into what you're doing in Landng? Because on the surface, it seems like you're basically this internet travel company that's fixing the problem. But where does sustainability and social impact fit into the grand scheme of things?
Absolutely. I think it's pretty well integrated, to be honest. Within the space as a whole, I think travel is paying a lot more attention to that. And there's a lot more kind of conscious intention behind whether you're a hotel or you're an Airbnb host or you're a restaurant or whatever, really trying to integrate that into those core values. But in terms of Landng, we are really trying to champion folks that are supporting those causes, but also allowing people to learn how to be their best selves while they're traveling, as well as people who may not actually take the trip, right? So there is a user segment that we're going to be supporting in terms of, you're just looking to learn about that place, right? You might not have the budget, or you might not have the time to go to Hawaii or to another place that you've been, dreaming about your whole life. But we're providing content and access to creators and kind of the storytelling aspect of how and when you go to those places, how to be showing up with your best self. So I think a lot of locations, particularly like, some of the larger ones like the islands and things like that, there is such a big drive behind that. A lot of the content now you'll see is like an eco tour to visit the jungle in Costa Rica, or, learning how to cook like indigenous dishes when you're in Hawaii or other places, things like that. So I think that we're trying to champion that in a really ethical way too. We don't want to, lean into the greenwashing, but allowing those kind of original and authentic storytellers to bring that to light.
And these storytellers, Devon, use the phrase creator economy. For the uninitiated, what does that mean, and why is it expected to be so huge?
Love this question. So, what the notion of even what is an influencer or a creator, right? If we're looking back at, the sort of rise of social media native platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and the like, and then brands starting to work with individuals that started having larger owned audiences within those platforms. The need to be able to sort of streamline that really broken process, because, at the time and even still now, your creators or influencers are receiving messages via, Instagram DMs, emails, random. It's just a completely broken process. And that's really where the sort of platform or the type of platform called creator marketplace or an influencer marketplace was made. As a sort of third-party tool that connects creators or influencers and brands to collaborate, to create content that are in line with the objectives needed for that business. Because, really, these individuals, creators or influencers, are essentially media channels. We're no longer just in the times of, if you're a marketing executive, I have X audience to reach. I have TV and radio. I think my audience is over there. Let's do some ads and go for it. It's so much more complex than that. And so these sort of creator marketplaces have existed as third-party tools up until recently, have sort of addressed that need. And so, but now what we're seeing is those native platforms integrating natively creator marketplaces. So TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest, and also creating tools so that it's easier for creators to create content and do what they do. And essentially, for them to reach their objective of monetizing their work. And so when we're looking at the big picture of, what this means as an industry, which is still in its infancy, in my opinion, it's going to be growing to an estimated 31 billion in the next few years, right? So this is an industry that will be continuing to grow in terms of democratizing where ad budgets are going to be spent. And that's also in terms of our revenue model, what we're going after. Our platform's totally free for people. We just want to help them solve the problem of content overwhelm with trip planning. We want to help make creators monetize their content. But what we're going after is ad budgets, specifically for influencer marketing from, travel brands, tourism authorities, and the like.
And Nacera, I've seen this a couple times. I've interviewed a couple founders who are involved in the marketplace space. I don't even know how to describe it, but why is this rise in marketplaces of all sorts of things, whether it's travel, spirituality? Can you put your finger on why that's taking off at this time?
I think it democratizes the process, right? Whether you're looking to shop for a consumer product or an experience or a service or what have you, going into a marketplace and having the ability to choose or select things based on specific criteria or budget or whatever it is, I think is really the strongest driver behind all that. I think from a B2B play, like brands, agencies, they love that, right? Like coming from the agency side, this was one of Devon's biggest pain points as well. Finding the right influencer or creator to support a campaign or to, tackle like their engagement issues or whatever the objective of the campaign was. It's really hard because the market is saturated and there's so many choices. So I think that having a marketplace, and particularly what we're doing with Landng, is making it, really niche, right? Like we're focusing on travel and lifestyle. So our creators are going to be fulfilling that need. Their profiles will reflect that. And then from a brand standpoint, like that's exactly what they're looking for. So we're taking that model, but also really kind of putting a microscope on that specific aspect of it.
And Devon, so let's have that uncomfortable conversation about money, because, as much as you two had a wonderful road trip and are building a really cool company, you can't do it without money. So you can't go on that road trip without money, and you can't do this without money. So what's the idea for building Landng? Private investors, private equity? Is it VCs? Talk to me about how you're putting it all together.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's so true. No road trips without the funds, right? At this point, so we're raising a 1.3 million pre-seed round. We're super excited about where we are right now. So we have about 250K committed, which has, this is at that point is helping us, get kicking off the development phase to get our MVP ready to go. And so we'll be present at, Web Summit and World Travel Market later this year, where we will be presenting, this sort of first version of Landng, which is really, really exciting to think about. And, to reach the remaining amount that's needed for our 1.3 million raise, we are in conversations with angels, with VCs as well. And so, what we're really looking for in terms of investment partners are obviously ones that have a deep understanding of our market. But that will also, really be allies through this process. We are female founders. We're diverse female founders. And the truth is that only 2% of venture capital up until, the research recently is going to women. So looking for partners that believe in the idea, believe that we are the right people to believe in that idea, that will challenge us, to grow through this, completely new experience. And but we're super, super excited to be kicking off development, and especially excited about the development partner and the consultant that we're going to be working with to get that done.
Awesome. Cool. And Nacera, I'm not going to let you go without asking you an uncomfortable question, because I've had the pleasure and honor of interviewing a lot of female founders and CEOs. And when they talk about that pitch meeting, when it comes to VCs or private investors, it's usually a table full of middle-aged white men. And they sometimes don't get the idea because it's not someone who looks like them presenting this idea. What has that journey been like for you and your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think so it's twofold. There have been calls and pitches that we've done that definitely, reflect exactly what you just said, right? Like a bunch of men on the other side, not really getting it, not really interested for whatever reason. And then we actually have also been really fortunate to be connected with funds and VCs that are led by women. And I have to give props where they're due. And a lot of those introductions and that network comes from my being a part of Feely. So Feely is a female founders network that does exactly that, provides you support as a founder, makes introductions and the like. And so I think that we've been really lucky and fortunate to have those experiences. And I will tell you, pitching to women, it's different, right? It doesn't necessarily, gender isn't the only factor, right, that directs how a meeting goes, but it is fun and inspiring to be pitching to really high power women who are making a difference and who also have their eye on supporting specifically female founders in these spaces, whether it's in media, travel, or tech. But I mean, ask us if we chat with you again in 6 months. I would love for you to ask that question again, because to be honest, we're just getting started, right? We're ramping up. This first round of funding that we've gotten so far has been within friends and family, angels, and a couple other avenues. But I would love to have that question asked again when we've done like a full 6 months of VC interviews and pitches.
That's awesome. And so, Devon, for you, let's look at that 6 months ahead. Where do you see yourself in Q1 of 2023?
Yeah, well, we have the vision, 5-10 years from now. So any year works for us. But in Q1 of 2023, we are in market. We are live. We've done our beta. We've completed our raise, and we are going to be in sort of full go-to-market mode and just speaking with as many users as possible, which we're already doing in terms of our beta signups. At this point, we have about 300 traveler users signed up for our beta. We have 55 creators to date that have an audience of 3 million on social media. We also have 15 B2B customers that are ready to use our platform, including Orient Express, Classy Azul, Orient Express being a part of Accor. We have strategic partners from Omnicom, Accor and the like. And so we, in addition to our own team, we have a pretty awesome tribe of support, including also Feely. And so getting to market, doing that with the highest success rate, and from that point forward, also me being based, myself being based in Europe at this point, but going to be between Los Angeles and Europe. We're also going to be rolling out, not first, of course, to the US, but rolling out to Europe as France as the first country as our immediate second priority in terms of deployment. Thinking of Landng really as a global platform, because it is by nature. And even at this point, we have creators that are from all over the world. We have global brands that are ready to work with us. And so working on developing that in the most sustainable way towards global growth.
Wow. And Nacera, easier question. How about being a founder, starting a company? How cool is that?
It's pretty cool. It's exciting. It's scary sometimes, but having a solid relationship with your co-founder, in the case that, Devon's one of my best friends. So I couldn't ask for a better situation. I think we both worked on large teams, small teams. And I think as we are growing out our hiring and resourcing model, I think we'll be excited to really be adding on to that. But I think that right now it's fun. It's exciting. We're on all the time. I think that it's kind of switching from a mode of like working from someone else, crazy hours, of course, to working for yourself, crazy hours, there's a different level of satisfaction at the end of the day, because you know that those 10 hours that you put in are directly benefiting you and your vision and your dream. And I think there's nothing like that, that feeling.
That's awesome. And Devon, lastly, as a founder of a company and the CEOs and the people who sort of gave birth to it, no one is ever going to love Landng as much as the two of you. Have you been able to wrap your brain around the fact that once you develop the team, get people together, they may like working with you, love working with you, but at the end of the day, no one on the God's green earth is going to love Landng as much as you. Have you been able to wrap your brain around that and process that as to you two have to protect this like the mama bear protecting their cub, the fact that this is like your baby. Are you prepared for that?
Definitely. And, thinking about the sort of both sides of that question, I've also been sort of thinking about how Landng, is coming into fruition, right? And it's been an interesting reflection process where I'm actually feeling myself removing myself more and more from the sort of company, if that makes sense, in terms of just wanting to be a sort of vessel so that this business, this idea can help the most people and do the most good in the world. And so, yes, definitely wanting, we will be the mama bears of this company until, hopefully, there's never a last day. It's just going to continue to grow and transform. But also sort of leaning back and just being a vessel. And, when we're building out our teams, how can I be the most supportive of those that are on my team so that the best sort of export of work can come through, right? Or, just being a sort of support to having this idea reach its highest potential.
Awesome. Well, it looks really exciting. I can't wait to see what Landng's going to look like in the next few months and years. So, Nacera, thank you very much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time as well, Joe.
And Devon, thank you again. Good luck. And it sounds like you guys are a dynamic duo. I love it. I love what you guys are doing. So thank you very much, Devon.
Thank you so much, Joe. It was great speaking with you.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. Thank you very much. To find out more about Devon and Nacera's company, check out landng.travel. That's LANDNG.travel. And that wraps up another episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I would love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Until next time, adios.